In the not too distant future, Ford will be launching a facelifted version of its Figo hatchback. But first, it will be launching this. It's called the Ford Freestyle, and essentially it is the Figo facelift. But as you can probably tell by looking at it, it is a cross hatchback. Yes, it joins the ranks of cars, family hatchbacks that have been raised slightly off the ground and covered in the sort of garnish that looks rugged and you'd usually find on an SUV. Now, what we're here to find out is what's the new Freestyle like to drive and what all new does it bring to the package that will also feature on the Figo facelift. The big changes on a facelift usually happen outside, so that's probably the best place to start. One thing's for sure, the raised ride height does make the Freestyle look more substantial than the standard Figo hatchback. It's also got all the typical crosshatch styling elements. Roof rails, cladding around the lower portion of the body and even scuff plates at the front and rear. They're all here and they give the Freestyle some personality. The wheels are now up to 15 inches, but thanks to the bigger gaps in the wheel arches, they feel like they could have been bigger still. The V of the bonnet is more pronounced now and it flows into a sharper cut grille. And what helps the Freestyle's appearance is the nicely done bumper with its angular C-shaped fog lamp enclosures. Smoked effect headlights, a sporty mesh for the grille, and a contrast effect for the wing mirrors further enhance the look. The stickers on the lower portion of the doors, well, they don't look half bad, but the 4 vents in the rear bumper are perhaps a step too far. The styling addenda and the reprofiled tail lamps, however, help distinguish the Freestyle from the current Figo at the back. So, let's hope much of this makes its way to the facelifted hatch. What's unchanged from before is the boot, which remains quite substantial for a small car. But as we saw with the updated EcoSport in 2017, Ford does pay a lot of attention to the cabin when it gives its cars a facelift. The interior of the Ford Freestyle, not surprisingly, is very similar to the interior of the old Figo. Of course, there are a few changes. The color scheme for one. Gone is the old beige plastic, and frankly I'm glad for that because it used to collect dirt quite easily, and in its place it's this lovely chocolate brown that I think looks a lot premium. On that topic, quality, plastic quality and general quality in here has taken a slight step up, but I still think it's a little bit shy of the high standards set by Hyundai and Volkswagen in this segment. The steering wheel, well, it's the same as before. We haven't got the brand new one from the EcoSport, but that's okay because this was always a great steering wheel to hold when you're driving, and it's got these lovely controls as well. The dials too have returned, and yes, I wish they were a little bit bigger, and I think it's odd that the tachometer and the fuel gauge are the same size. It's a bit strange, but also you get loads of storage in the central console, huge door bins to keep bottles and glasses. And well, there's a nice little rubberized place for your phone here. The USB ports are now illuminated, which is cool. And the new well-finished gear lever, it's got this nice shift lock, which is a good safety feature to have. And the engine is now started with a button rather than a turn of the key. Of course, before I started saying any of this, you will have noticed the biggest change, and that's the new touchscreen. It is essentially the same touchscreen that you get in the EcoSport. Absolutely brilliant, possibly the best in the class, but it's only shrunken down to a 6.5-inch screen. Now let me tell you what all features are in there. Sure, there's no native navigation app, but you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As before, you get a rather comprehensive set of voice commands, Ford's emergency assist feature, and the My Key system that lets you set volume and speed restrictions on the car for other drivers. But the best part is that Ford's latest Sync 3 touch interface runs so smoothly and crisply, just like a high-end smartphone. Touchscreen aside, there's loads else on the equipment list too, like keyless go, automatic headlamps, dual USB ports, a rear view camera with guidelines, auto climate control, active rollover protection, and even traction control. This top spec variant even gets 6 airbags. So you'll be well catered to inside the cabin of a Ford Freestyle, but does it drive like a Ford should? The Freestyle will debut a brand new 1.2-litre petrol engine when it goes on sale, but today we're driving the diesel. It gets the same strong 1.5-litre motor with 100 horsepower and 250 Newton meters as the Figo, which is a lot of poke for a compact car. The result is that you get a lot of performance out of it. Sure, there's a little bit of lag, but it's an acceptable amount. But once you get past about 2000 RPM, it just pulls and pulls all the way to nearly 5000 RPM. It doesn't have an instant punch of power, nor is it very free revving. What it is instead is nice and linear. So it's a slow, strong pull all the way to the red line. It does, however, get quite vocal beyond 3500 RPM. So perhaps it's better to shift up earlier. Don't worry, you'll still have plenty of power to keep you moving steadily. And though the gearbox is still a 5-speed manual, it's an all-new unit developed by Getrag, rather than the aging IB5 gearbox from the Figo. Moreover, when we strapped on our testing equipment, it clocked a 0 to 100 kph time of 11.7 seconds, 20 to 80 kph in 11.98 seconds in third gear, and 40 to 100 kph in 14.43 seconds in fourth. All except the last of which are the quickest among the current crop of diesel cross hatchbacks. But where this car redeems itself in true Ford fashion are the dynamics. They've done it again. They've got an electric power steering that is both engaging and light and easy to use. In fact, the Ford engineers had to make it lighter still by customer demand, just to make it easier to drive in the city. But the fact remains that despite doing that, it is still a whole lot more feelsome and communicative than anything a modern Maruti or Hyundai offers. The Freestyle has clearly been set up by enthusiasts. It's an absolute hoot on a good road. Body roll is much better contained than other cross hatchbacks that have raised suspension thanks to a tougher anti-roll bar. And Ford is also famous for delivering this pin-sharp handling without compromising on comfort. But with this raised suspension, have they managed to do it again? To find out, I'm gonna hop into the back seat and see what that's like. The back seat of the Ford Freestyle is pretty much exactly the same as the back seat of the Ford Figo, and that is to say, it has quite a bit of space by compact car standards, good headroom, good knee room, and thigh support is acceptable. What isn't so great, however, is these rear headrests. They aren't adjustable and they're set so low. They aren't supporting my neck nor my head. They're sort of in between my shoulders, and that's not really what you want from a headrest. Now, the Figo already rode quite well on its own, but there are some interesting factors at play with the Freestyle that affect its ride quality. There's the fact that the suspension has been raised and retuned in the process, and there's also the fact that the wheels are now a size larger at 15 inches with wider tires. At 185 by 60 R15, they have a larger rolling circumference, which means they don't get swallowed up by potholes like the smaller 14 inches of the Figo sometimes could. But the big advantage of raised suspension is higher ground clearance, and the Freestyles has gone up by 15mm compared to the Figo to a solid 189mm. No, that doesn't instantly make it an SUV, but what it does is let you tackle rough patches of road, or indeed a dusty path, with much greater peace of mind. It even rides well in situations like this, and only the most extreme of bumps will cause some steering shock to filter through. Now, frankly, the question I should have asked at the start of this review is, why does the Freestyle even exist at all? You see, cross hatchbacks are usually created to fill the niche that would otherwise be occupied by a compact SUV in a car maker's range, and Ford, very famously, already has a sub-4 meter SUV in its range, the EcoSport. So why does it exist? Well, Ford seems to think that there is enough of a gap between the Figo and the EcoSport to fit in another pseudo SUV. Then there's the fact that, on its own, it's just a great car. As ever with Ford, the dynamics are just really well sorted. It rides and handles like a dream, and it's even more comfortable than the Figo was. And with the updates to the inside, the infotainment, and the improved cabin quality, it is now on par with the competition. So it's the car for those who think that an EcoSport is just a little too big, but they still want something that can handle a rough road. The question at the start was, why does the Freestyle exist? Well, the answer is, why not?